Krishna, 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 Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Baba Para, Jaya Baba Para, Jaya Baba Para, Chilla Baba Para. Nitaka Diva, 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 Nitaka Diva. Jai Gaura Premanande, Prabhupada King, Same Vidabhaktivinoda King, Gaura Premanande. Somebody can free me from the harmonium. Yeah, all right. Maybe more. Good. Thank you. Yes. Om Agyantimandasya Gyananjalasalakaya Chakshunmilitam Dena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manupistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Upakaramayam Danati Swavadantikam Namam Vishnubhadaya Kushabhasa Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitya Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Govadi Prajayane Nivashesha Shunivari Pisatari Satarine Panchakapa Tubasha Kripa Sinivevata Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Go Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. First of all, thank you for coming together to our discussion on the false ego. Monday is usually always a bit of a sleepy day. People had their dose of Krishna consciousness on the weekend. But so I'm happy that some of you decided to come. Yes, so our topic for today and tomorrow is the false ego, our constant companion and troublemaker. And actually, I do have a 10-hour seminar on this. That's how I usually give it in Mayapur, over 4 days at 2.5 hours each, something like that. So here, obviously, we can only give some little introduction, hoping that if there's still anybody here who did not get the false ego book, that maybe this discussion will inspire you to do so. And let me first of all share a few thoughts, what inspired me to give this topic more attention. Because as I mentioned already, I like to do holy name retreats. And after doing holy name retreats for so many years, I started realizing that if we don't parallel work on dissolving our false ego, then our attempts to chant the holy name can be compared to an elephant taking bath. So after elephant takes bath, first thing he does, he throws some dust back on his back with his trunk, makes himself dirty again. So this is somewhat what happens to us, you know, that after making so many endeavors to get on deeper levels of chanting, we fall back into our false ego patterns of behaviors. And we are almost trapped in them because we are so conditioned, and very easily we fall back into these patterns without maybe even realizing. And as Mahaprabhu says, we can actually only chant the holy name when we are more humble than a blade of grass and more tolerant than a tree. So as long as we are stuck in these false ego patterns of behaviors, we actually can't really receive the benefit which the holy name carries. And we are not really getting anywhere much. Yes, and that realization one day dawned upon me that this topic of the false ego really deserves more attention, because it is so subtle that very easily we can do the opposite of what we should be doing in Krishna consciousness. And instead of dissolving and subduing the false ego, we can very nicely boost it and feed it like anything. Krishna consciousness offers a lot of opportunities for this, right? Yes. For example, kirtan. Fantastic opportunity to boost the false ego, to show off, you know, to use the holy name to bring attention to ourselves and glorify ourselves rather than the Lord. You know, it is going on. Oh, some living entity is buzzing here in front of my nose. Yes, so, and also, you know, when you're around for a while, and especially if you have an analytical mind like mine, I always, you know, like to get to the roots of things, and I have this therapist approach to preaching, actually, that I'm always trying to make the diagnose, and are we taking the medicine and so on. So yeah, I mean, after being around for a while, you observe how strong these attachments to title and position can be, you know? And you wonder, well, the Shastras are promising detachment and all that. But yeah, so many politics are happening over titles and positions. And, you know, I was scratching my head thinking, well, somehow I thought the detachment should be there. So maybe we are missing something, you know? Yes. And then also it is interesting to observe that the most prominent, let's put it that way. The more prominent our false ego is, the more, you know, dominant and prominent it is, the less we can see it. This is also interesting. That you would think it should be the other way around, that the bigger our false ego is, the more easy we can see it. But no, it's the other way around. And in that regard, I had this amusing situation where once one Mataji in Europe, who I know a little bit, she has a very dominant false ego, and therefore she always gets herself into conflicts and misunderstandings and so, and then at some stage she kind of turned towards me and revealed her mind, and I thought, all right, let me try and help her to understand what the problem is. And I was very careful, well knowing that false ego doesn't like to be addressed, you know. Our false ego doesn't like it if we talk about the false ego. So I was very careful saying, well, you know, this false ego always gets us into trouble. So then her reaction was very interesting. She was saying, false ego. She was actually laughing. And she was saying, false ego, come on, what's that? I don't have that. And I thought, oh my God, you know, how is it possible if a person is so tormented by her false ego, and then she laughs it off and says, come on, what's that? I don't have that. I was really shocked. I didn't know what to say. And then all I could say was, I wish I could say this about myself, that I don't have it. Yeah, so it's indeed like that, that we require a little bit of purification to even detect it. And the more purified we become, the more we realize that almost every day our false ego gets into our way and pushes us to say and do things which we shouldn't say and do, and you know. But yeah, people easily miss it. And I remember another time I was giving a little introductory seminar on this topic in Vrindavan. And then afterwards, one Mataji came up to me. She's been around at least for 15 years, you know, seriously practicing. So she said to me, oh, thank you for giving the seminar. Now I realize. She said, now I realize that I actually do have a false ego. And she said, I always thought this is just some philosophical, technical detail which has no relevance to me. You know, so this is what I'm coming across, that people after 15 years of serious practice, they, you know, that they thought all that time that this is something which has no relevance to them. It's just some technical, philosophical thing, you know. Yes. So these things all inspired me to give this topic more attention. Yeah, especially because we can really completely miss the target. And this is going on, that we like to boost and feed the false ego and show off. And because that's what's happening out there in the material world, you know, that the path to success is to show off. The more expert we are in promoting ourselves and showing off, the more successful we become, you know. But as we know, 269 in Bhagavad Gita, so what is day to the common person is night to the introspective sage. So in other words, what is success in material life, the perverted reflection, you know, is actually the lowest in spiritual life. That principle really accompanies us throughout our whole spiritual practice. It's good to keep this in the back of our mind, that what is considered success in material life is usually the lowest or an obstacle in spiritual life. It's really like that, you know, the two are so opposite, promoting the opposite worldview. You know, material life is all about increasing sense enjoyment, and spiritual life is all minimizing it and giving up the lower taste for the sake of a higher taste. I mean, it can't be much more opposite than that, really, you know. Yeah, so much as a little introduction. Just how long shall we go? The burning question. Huh? Not what you usually do, but how much time do you want to give me today? Because 8:30. Okay, so that sounds good. Then we have an hour. Good. Thank you. Yes. Yes. So let us begin by remembering the soul is covered by a gross body made from earth, water, fire, air, ether. And then there is the subtle body made from mind, intelligence, false ego. Here we have it. So false ego is the most subtle part of the subtle material body. And it is so subtle that we easily miss it completely. And we identify with it like anything. Another thing is interesting to understand, that in the same way how the gross body, the elements, you actually cannot really separate. You know, you show me here in your body, where's the earth? Where's the water? Where's the fire? Where's the air? Where's the ether? You can't separate the elements. They're all mixed, right? Yes. And it is similar with the subtle body too, in a sense that these three elements of mind, intelligence, false ego, they really affect each other backwards and forwards. And you can't really separate them so easily. And in fact, even in regards to chanting, the other day we had the discussion on chanting the holy name. When we think our mind is wandering and distracting us, once we get a little insight how the false ego works, we actually discover that behind the mind is the false ego. And the false ego uses the mind and intelligence as tools to get its gratification. So very often, what we think is the mind, there's actually the false ego behind, hiding behind it. And it's the false ego that tortures us and doesn't leave us alone and takes us for a whole ride. And like, for example, whenever we find ourselves in this situation, when we have these monologues or dialogues going on in our head in circles, and we can't drop it, right? You know that situation? Yes? Or is it only me who knows it? Yes. Whenever, you know, things go in circles there, again and again, and we just can't drop it. This is always a sure sign that the false ego takes us for a ride. It's not the mind, it's the false ego behind it, you know? Yes, 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 so it's interesting. In any case, so the subtle body, as we know, at the moment of death, takes the soul to the next destination. So the same mind, intelligence, false ego has been accompanying us for many, many lifetimes. So false ego, very deep, very deep-rooted, not so easy to free ourselves and transform this false ego into the real ego. So basically, false ego means we think ourselves to be something which we are not. That's in a nutshell what the false ego is affecting on us. You know, we think ourselves to be something which we are not. So many things. Man, woman, American, Indian, German, this, that, this, that, this, that. You know, but the real ego is Jiva Swaparaya Nitya Krishna Das. I am eternally Krishna's servant. That's the real constitutional, eternal position, the real ego. I am servant. And the false ego is I'm so many other things, controller, enjoyer, proprietor, center of the universe, and. So, and if we want to get out of this material world, the subtle body of mind, intelligence, false ego has to be completely spiritualized, completely transformed. All the material aspects have to be dissolved and replaced with spiritual impressions, desires, attachments, and. So, not so easy. It actually requires quite some internal work. Yes. Doesn't happen just automatically. No, because as I mentioned, we are so trapped in these patterns of behaviors which are, you know, motivated by the false ego that, yeah, not so easy to get out. So, and interestingly, well, that's pretty heavy. Let's see how long I will have that around my neck. Yes, so interestingly, false ego already starts working and affecting on us as a small child. I remember once I was visiting one family. Their daughter was 1 year old, couldn't talk, but she could walk. And while I was sitting in the lounge room talking to the parents, she was bringing all her toys into the lounge room. And I didn't really give it that much importance. But then the mother said, she wants to show off her toys because you are here. And I thought, oh my God, that's how it starts. Already at 1 year of age, you want to show off, you know, thinking my toys are so special. And because they are my toys, that's why I am so special. Look at me and my toys, you know. Yeah, for kids, the toys are the first possessions. And very often there's a lot of fight over the toys, you know, yes. And actually, probably even before 1 year of age, the false ego kicks in. You know, often kids make these tantrums and want to get their, you know, will push it through with all kinds of means and all that. You know, this is already all the false ego, you know. Yes. So, and then as we grow older, the false ego becomes more and more prominent in a sense that we accept more and more designations, right? So it starts as a small child. So I'm a boy, I'm a girl. Then I'm a pupil, I'm a student, I'm a medical student, engineering student, this student, that student. So then maybe, we have finished our studies. So now I'm a doctor, professor, PhD, this, that. So then maybe we get married. So now I'm mother, father, husband, wife, and so, and it doesn't end by becoming a devotee, So then it continues there. I'm a brahmachari, I'm a grihasta, I'm the head pujari, I'm a Sankirtan devotee, I'm the head cook, and temple president, and so on. So they are all roles we are playing, like we may be wearing different caps, different hats at certain times, We all have different roles, like at work in the office, we play one role. Then at home with our parents, we play another role. Then with our wife, husband, we play again a different role. Then at the temple, we play a different role. So we all have different roles we play, like we wear different hats at certain times. But usually we don't identify with the hats that much, hopefully. I mean, some people also even identify with a hat, thinking, oh, this is me, a part of my individuality and so on. But yes, with these roles, we do identify. So my question to you, why do we identify so much with these roles? Any suggestion? Why do we identify with them? What makes us identify? Yes? We think they're true. Yes, that's one point. But what else? Material conditioning. Yes. 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 These hats, these roles give us a certain subtle sense gratification, right? Yes. They give us this gratification of having some importance, of being somebody, some little recognition. And that's exactly what the false ego demands. The false ego demands this kind of gratification of being somebody. And that's why we identify with it. Yes. That's the whole thing, Yes. Yes. And I mean, we can just imagine, not hinting at you, Prabhu, but let us imagine a person is the temple president, and then, or maybe we should take a different designation. Huh? GBC? Okay, let's say a person is a GBC. So, and then one day somebody comes up to us and says, oh, actually, we think somebody else should take that post. So if we identify as servant only, then this will not be a big deal, right? We will simply say, okay, whatever. I thought I can serve you nicely in this way, but if you have some other suggestions, please let me know. All I want to do is serve. And this will be no issue. But unfortunately, most of the times it's not like that, And And once you've been around for a while, and again, I'm not saying this to criticize or something, but I'm just making the diagnose here. Unfortunately, maybe not on the level of GBCs. I think GBCs are quite glad if somebody else wants to do the thankless task, you know. But it's more on a lower level, you know, more TP or something. Yeah, unfortunately, most of the time, people are pretty attached and they don't so easily give up that post. And sometimes it's a whole battle to remove somebody, you know. Yes, unfortunately, it's like that. And I was often thinking, God, you know, it shouldn't be like that. I thought we are just humble servant and we, you know, so what's missing here? And I mean, once I even had this conversation with one very senior devotee in a high position. And because I have a bit of a friendship with that person, so we were talking. And that, you know, point was in the air that this person would have to give up their position. So, and then that person, and then I said to that person, well, there is life beyond being ... you know, such and such. I'm not going to say what. So there is life beyond being this and this and this. And then the person said, yeah, all right, but what am I then? And I just said, well, Vaishnava, servant. Yeah, okay, but, you know, still, I mean, what am I then? And wow, I was puzzled, you know, and person is senior to me, so I didn't say anything more. It's not my position, you know, to. But yeah, I mean, I started realizing you can almost fall into an identity crisis when you give up your post, you know, your title, that you fall into a hole there. What am I now? I lost my whole identity here, and now I am nothing all of a sudden. You know, so this is what happens when we identify with these titles, you know. Yeah. And once I remember, I was sharing with one Mataji here from the States, and she was for many years the headmaster of a school. And she simply wanted to retire and hand over the post, so she did. But she shared with me privately how this, took her quite a while, because for so many years, she had that position of being the headmaster of the school. And then, she had to really readjust her perspective. And she also felt a little bit this identity crisis. So what am I now, you know? Yeah, so I mean, this just shows that, you know, very easily we just get so attached to wearing certain hats and we identify with them completely. And then when somehow we have to give them up, or even if we voluntarily hand them over, there's a whole struggle there, you know? Yes. Yeah, so I want to do just a 2-minute personal exercise with you, just to become a little more conscious of this, that you turn to your neighbor and you share what is your favorite hat. The hat which is most dear to you, and the thought of giving it up can be worse than death. Yes. So share. Okay, go Manandi. Hari Hari Bol. I guess we don't. Hari Bol. I guess we probably don't have any mothers amongst us today, but often for mothers, the I am the mother hat is a pretty strong one, you know, that people really identify and, you know, and interestingly, when the children are 15, 16, the parents have to take off this I'm the mother, I'm the father's hat. And they have to put on their hat, I'm the friend. Yeah. And yeah, you can see how difficult this is often, especially for mothers, you know, that they can't stop controlling, instructing, correcting, disciplining, even if the son is already 45, you know, they still harass him. And so that comes because of this attachment to the I am the mother's hat, you know. Also, some men have shared with me how this I'm the brahmachari, I'm a brahmachari hat is also a pretty strong one, you know, and how for some men it's really, it's a whole big thing to, you know, move on to the next ashram because of this attachment to I'm a brahmachari. Because there is some little recognition coming with that, you know, to be in saffron and all that. Definitely. I mean, it's almost an extinct species here in America, at least. So, yeah. So, yeah, we have to be careful that we are not a brahmachari just because we attached to that false ego gratification. You know, that would be the wrong motive, you know. Yes. Yeah, so we all have our favorite hats. So good to become a little conscious of it, you know. And also, in one purport, Prabhupada gives this nice analogy. He says, life in the material world is like a nonsensical stage performance. Prabhupada's choice of words is often very special and unique and very to the point, some, you know, unusual combination of words. So nonsensical stage performance. This is exactly what it is. Each lifetime we can imagine like a stage performance where we are on the stage, we play our little role. So this life, I'm an Indian man and I'm running, or I'm so busy, I really take it all in. I've got so many important things to do, running. So, and then death comes, curtain closes, show is over, finished. So the next life, curtain opens, this time German woman, again, running, so busy, you're really taking it in. Oh, I'm so important here, and, you know, and then again, death comes, show is over, so finished. Then maybe next life, dog in Sweden, barking. So dog also has a dog's mind, dog's intelligence, dog's false ego, definitely. You know, dogs have a very prominent false ego. You know, who are you barking? Woof, woof, woof. I have to protect this property. You can't come in here. And it's mine, you know. Yeah, full on, you know. So that's exactly what life in the material world is. A nonsensical stage performance. And it's the false ego that traps us in this stage performance lifetime after lifetime, you know. Yes, it's the false ego that makes us identify with the whole role we are playing in that stage performance, you know. Yes. And I mean, it's very clear if we think ourselves to be something which we are not, that has to bring along a lot of anxiety, right? Yes, because we always have to pretend to be something which we are actually not. So let's imagine we are serving at a king's court as servant. So, and then one day we proclaim, so I am the king now. So this would give us a lot of fears and anxieties. What if people notice that I'm actually not the king? And how can I convince everybody that I am the king? And what do I have to do that I look like I'm the king? And so there is no question of being peaceful as long as we think ourselves to be something which we are not, right? So, and then if we say, okay, actually, I was just joking, I'm not the king, I'm the servant, Thank God, then we can relax and we can just be what we actually are. We are the servant. We are meant to serve. So same thing, as long as the false ego is pushing us, for this gratification, to be so special and unique and the center of the universe and the topmost proprietor, enjoyer, controller. Everything is meant for me and my pleasure. As long as we have this mindset, there will be no peace. And no peace. There will be always anxieties and frustrations and disappointments. And. So it's actually quite practical that really to be servant offers the solution to any problem we may be facing. It's a good thing to keep in the back of your mind. If you find yourself in an unpleasant situation where you get agitated or upset or whatever it may be, if you can make these 2 steps back and ask yourself, what am I here? Am I servant here? Or am I trying to be the enjoyer and controller? And then we will realize that being servant always offers the solution. And all frustration comes about because we try to be something else. Like a simple example, let us imagine we are visiting a community as a traveling preacher. We have scheduled all different events. So, and then a more senior traveling preacher comes unexpectedly. So then the local devotees may say, well, he's a senior Maharaj, maybe he should give the Sunday feast lecture. So if we are servant, this will be no issue. Yes, of course, all I want to do is serve. I can serve by speaking. I can also serve by hearing. It's no difference to me. All I want to do is serve. Then this will be no issue. But if we are attached to that gratification that we are sitting on the Vyasa-san and we are giving the class, then we get all agitated. Or what is this? We made the whole schedule and I especially flew here and that's not fair. And he should have announced himself. Then I wouldn't even have come and whatever, So yeah, just a simple example to illustrate this point, how being a servant always offers the solution actually. And any kind of agitation, frustration, anger, disappointment, our disappointments are often there because we expect some ego gratification. And then for whatever reason, we don't get it. And then we're all disappointed. Yeah, so good to know, good to become more conscious of these things. Yeah, so hearing is always the first step, that we become conscious. Prabhupada used to say, before becoming Krishna conscious, we have to become conscious first. Because so often we are so unconscious, not reflecting, not introspecting, not being perceptive enough to understand what's going on more subtle levels. And we are just so unconscious of our words, of our activities, of our own reactions towards people or situations and yes. Yes. Well, what we can do is, I do want to present one more thing, but maybe we'll just stop for a minute and see if we have questions, preferably just about what we discussed, not questions like, so how do we get rid of the false ego or something, because we are not there yet, just about what we discussed. Yes, Prabhu. Say it again. The hat of a guru, being a guru. I am guru. Well, let's put it that way. A person who is qualified to be guru shouldn't identify with a hat. You know, he should see himself only a servant and nothing else. I mean, really, being guru is a thankless task. And, you know, guru is the person who sacrifices himself the most to serve, you know, as many living entities as he can. So, yeah, if he identifies with that hat, then, yeah, let's put it that way, he is not topmost guru. Yes, yes.
Why does the false ego use the mind and intelligence for sense gratification?
Say it again.
Why does the false ego use the mind and the intelligence for sense gratification?
Well, it's more that the false ego uses the mind and intelligence as tools to get the gratification that it wants to get. You know? Like, for example, I was mentioning when some dialogues and monologues are going around in our head in circles. So behind it is the false ego, you know, crying out for justice. Oh, you know, they shouldn't have treated me like that. And then he said this and I said that. And actually I should have said this. And why did he say that? And. So the false ego basically wants to be right. Or, you know, if we are offended, for example, that's a classic example for the false ego to cry out for justice. You know, people keep these grudges and feelings of being offended, sometimes for years, you know, for 20 years, they carry them with them around. Oh, that person said this and this, and, you know, you can't let go. So behind it is the false ego pushing the mind and intelligence for a certain gratification. You know, that, oh, you were right, they were wrong, you know, or they should have not treated you like this, and this was unfair, and. You know, so that's the false ego, and it uses the mind and intelligence, you know, and then the mind, you know, makes us go around in circles, but actually behind it is the false ego. That's the real, you know, troublemaker. It's the false ego, you know. Yes.
So the false shelters that one has, like taking shelter of wealth, knowledge, intelligence, family members, attachment to those, is that a different obstacle than false ego, or is it the same as false ego? It's not an identification with them, but there is a shelter taking in these things.
Yeah, well, it also comes about through false ego, definitely. I mean, you know, almost everything in this material world, our existence and our challenges, they boil down to the false ego, really, because that's why we are here. But like Prabhupada, for example, said, you know, that the family members, they are like extended false ego. My husband, my wife, my children, you know, it's extended false ego. It's all I, me, and mine. My house, my bank balance, and. Yeah, this is all extended false ego. And we think ourselves to be safe, right? If we have a good bank balance and this and that and this and that, you know, that gives us this illusory security, right? But at the moment of death, at the latest at that moment, it's all stripped off us, you know, has no significance, absolutely none. Good to remember, you know, that all these things which seem now so important to us, at the moment of death, no significance. The only thing that counts at that moment is my relationship with Krishna. Yes. Because that's eternal reality, you know. Everything else, part of the nonsensical stage performance, everything else. Anything else? Maybe from the ladies' side for a change?
I had this misconception for a long time that being attached to our services is important. But now you've changed my mind and I see it differently now. And so if I'm understanding correctly, if we become attached to being the servant as opposed to the role of our services, then we're acting on the real ego.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, we should just be attached to serving. So we can say, as long as we are attached to one particular service, there's a good chance that there's also some false ego gratification there. You know, that's why we like that service and not the other service. But also let us understand that the false ego is not all bad. It also does have some little good part in it too, because at least it gets us going. So, yes, my bank in Germany, they have this motto on their website. Everyone has something that keeps him going. So that's the false ego, you know, it keeps us going. I am mother, I am father, I am this, so I have to do something here, you know, it motivates. Yes. So actually we will come in a minute to this point. But yes, false ego, it also has some good part in it because at least it gets us out of tamaguna. You know, I once heard in a lecture one person saying, yes, false ego has to be transformed, has to be given up, but not too quickly. Because very easily, if we give it up too quickly, then we do nothing. We just drown in tamaguna and laziness, you know. So at least the false ego gets us going. That's something. And definitely, I mean, we can't get too mental about it because definitely, you know, when we come to Krishna consciousness, of course, our motive is not pure. Of course not. It is mixed, you know. And also the joy and satisfaction we experience in Krishna consciousness is also not pure in the beginning. It is mixed. So there is some false ego gratification there, of course, in the beginning, you know. So it's not that it's all bad, but we should strive to purify it, you know? And as everything in Krishna consciousness, it is a gradual process. So we can't get all disappointed. Oh, there's some false ego gratification here and there and here and there. No, good to be clear about it, good to be realistic about it, you know, and you know, endeavor to purify it. So coming back to your point, initially, it's not so bad to be attached to a certain kind of service, because at least it motivates us to serve. At least we're serving. You know, that's already a good start, right? So that's why initially we engage people according to their nature, what they like to do, you know, but that is an initial phase and stage. And then a more advanced stage is where we're happy to do anything. And our main pleasure and satisfaction actually comes from our relationship with Krishna, with Prabhupada, with Guru, you know? And we're just happy to do anything, any service, even though the result may not be so good. But if that's what we are asked to do, okay, no problem, you know? Yes. Maharaj has a question or comment, maybe.
It might not be very important, but Prabhupada also used our false egos to motivate us, as you were saying. One of my favorites was, what's the use of being American unless you do something wonderful? So I thought that was great. I don't know if you understood what I said.
What was that? What's the use of being married or being American unless you do something wonderful? Yes. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it depends. If it is an ambition, we want to do something wonderful to be recognized, then that would be false ego, you know. But if we want to sacrifice our life for Prabhupada's pleasure, you know, not for our own gratification, then it is pure, you know. So false ego is very subtle, you know. So it doesn't mean that just by wanting to do something wonderful, we are acting on the false ego platform or something. It is rather subtle, you know. Yes, it is very subtle. Basically, it depends on the consciousness. If we want to bring attention to ourselves and enjoy that glorification and being special and outstanding and all that, or whether we are just humbly sacrificing ourselves for, yeah, Krishna's and Prabhupada's pleasure, Guru's pleasure, you know. Yes. I mean, yes, like Prabhupada also was motivating the devotees with competition and book distribution, right? Not only book distribution, even dressing the deities. Also, we can read, you know, how Prabhupada said, yes, LA is center number one, or Dallas has the most beautiful deities, and everybody was trying to outdo that temple, and, you know, and. So yeah, false ego gets us going. But if that remains our motivation, just to be the number one, then usually we will not last. And in regards to book distribution, we can really see this, you know. that like Germany had so many big heroes on book distribution when Harry Cage was, you know, inspiring everybody to distribute books. But where are all these heroes now? Most of them are not around anymore. And I have spoken to some of them, and they were admitting that this was, you know, a bit of a false ego race and battle, and yeah, and this competition was often not so, not so. There was quite some enmity there, you know. It was quite inimical and so on, you know, and not really being happy about the glories of the other person when that other person was winning and doing better than ourselves. Then there was some envy and so on there, you know. So initially it is a driving force, but it has to be purified. Otherwise, we may not be able to do the service forever if it's just for the sake of, you know, that we want to be the number one or something. You know, that will not give us that spiritual strength to last, you know. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I remember we were going out, and on small days we were not handing in our scores. You know, we were putting them on the next day because it was too embarrassing to have a small score read out, you know. All these things, I remember them definitely. And all this, there was quite a bit of envious competition there, you know, in the teams and stuff, you know. So it wasn't all so pure, you know. Anything else? Yes, Pooh. I understood the first part, that the servant of the king has the facilities of the king. But what was part two? I couldn't quite catch it. How do you? The what?
Narcissistic persona.
Narcissistic. The narcissism playing into false ego. Narcissistic. What exactly does that mean?
Narcissism.
Narcissism. So if you're in love with yourself, basically, right? Well, yeah, I mean, that's a whole false ego driven thing. Yeah, completely. Just thinking, you know, we are so great and we are in love with ourselves, and right? Yeah, I mean, false ego has all kinds of, you know, insane ways of, becoming more and more prominent and torturing people more and more and pushing people to do most ridiculous activities just to show off and, you know, yes, really grotesque, insane. I mean, people even, you know, perform all kinds of horrible crimes, and then they film themselves, you know, doing crimes and putting it on the internet, killing people, abusing people, all kinds of stuff. You know, this is all false ego, you know. Look what I'm doing. Whole world should see it. You know, yes. It's quite bizarre, you know. Yes. All right, let me, time is flying. let me make this one more point, which I want to present. This is Bhagavad Gita 1858. There Krishna is giving us two choices how to act in life. Choice number one is, if you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. That's option number one. So, and then Krishna says, option number two, if, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. So let's go back to option number one. If you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. So being conscious of Krishna, acting in consciousness of Krishna, of course means that we understand our position of being servant, right? We acting in that consciousness of simply wanting to serve. And not only that, we also follow, of course, Krishna's instructions, Krishna's recommendations. So if we act in that mood, then we can pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by Krishna's grace. Wow, amazing. You know? As we mentioned, being servant is the solution to all problems, all obstacles. Everything falls into place if we just take that position of servant. So, but option number two, if we do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, this is exactly what the false ego does. It blocks the ears, blocks the intelligence. We can't hear, we can't understand. And sooner or later, we will be lost. At the latest, at the moment of death, when we have to do another round in this material world. But already so much before then also. And that's, again, a very practical thing, that when we reflect back on our life, you know, we can analyze those times when we experience some suffering, some unpleasant situations. And when we look back and we are a little introspective, most likely we can recognize that we were acting under false ego. And that was what created our miseries, you know, that somehow we wanted to show off, or we wanted to be the hero who knows it all and does it all, or whatever, you know, that there was some subtle false ego motivation, and that entangled us in some miseries. It really works like that. And at that time, of course, we didn't notice, you know, because that's what the false ego does. It blocks the ears and intelligence, and we don't even understand. But then when we look back a few years later, after we got a little bit of purification, then we can realize, oh yes, you know, I was on some trip, you know. Yeah, I wanted to push something through here and so on, you know. And that's why I was suffering, you know. Yes. So, but this verse also tells us that there are these two motivating forces. That in the material world, the motivating force is that ambitiousness. I want to become this, that, and the other thing. So that is the false ego motivation. And that's what people take to be a success in the material world. I want to become a doctor, lawyer, this, that. We take some designation and we strive for that and we identify with that. And this ambitiousness motivates us to become this, that, and the other thing. But in devotional life, there is a different motivating force that leads to success, not this ambitious false ego motivating force. There, the motivating force is, all I want to do is serve. Yes, because that is our true position. And it really works like that if we just serve, we give ourselves, our heart and soul in service. Krishna recognizes that as Paramatma in the heart, and Krishna arranges that the right doors and opportunities open up at the right time. Yes, we can rely on that. So in spiritual life, no need to chalk out a whole career. What will I want to become? Yes, I become a guru, a sannyasi, this, a famous kirtaniya, traveling preacher, author. I will write so many books. And no, this is not the way we will be successful in spiritual life. In spiritual life, all we should do is serve. Give our heart and soul in service. And then sooner or later, all the right opportunities at the right time will open up to us. So I find this a very important thing for devotees to understand, because we are so conditioned by this ambitiousness which is going on out there in the material world. And very easily we take that into our spiritual life. And we think this is also the path to success in spiritual life. I want to become a leader and, no, this is not the path to success. Simply let's serve. And it is also very practical, that our seniors, if they see that we are actually really giving ourselves in service and we are responsible and dutiful and punctual and reliable and we really give our everything in service, then naturally other opportunities will come up towards us, right? It's very natural because everybody wants the Sankirtan movement to spread. So if we show ourselves, reliable and dutiful and really, we give ourselves in service, Krishna will arrange so many opportunities to come our way, definitely. So I find this, as I mentioned, I find this very important for devotees to understand. Because, sometimes in our society we can feel this ambitiousness entering, and people don't realize that actually, to do something in devotional life, we actually need the blessings. We need the blessings of the senior devotees, of Guru, of Prabhupada, of the Lord, And it's not a question of ambitiousness, but we need the blessings. We need some little empowerment. Yes. And I mean, we can see this very clearly on, on the first generation of Prabhupada's disciples, They received, or some of them received, that empowerment through that mood of being willing to sacrifice their life for Prabhupada, And that gave them this empowerment that they could do so many things. even though in those days there was no Bhakti Shastri courses and all these things happening, but just merely by their mood of being ready to sacrifice their very life for Prabhupada's mission, that attracted Krishna's and Prabhupada's merciful glance upon them, and the blessings and the empowerment, So in spiritual life, we can do something nice by the blessings and by the empowerment of the Lord, proportionally to how much we surrender in service and be willing to sacrifice our very life in service, rather than the ambitious drive there. That will not attract, blessings and empowerment, the ambitiousness. No, it will not, because there is this subtle impurity there, that ambitiousness is always connected with that we want to enjoy the result, the glory, the fame, the recognition. And Krishna is not so attracted to that kind of service mood, because we do it for our glory and not for his glory, very subtle. Okay, but yes, again, in the very beginning stage, definitely the motivating, the false ego motivating force is much stronger than the motivating force of wanting to serve and please Krishna. All right? We can often see this on a simple thing, like when we look at temple cars. Do you have a temple car here? Usually, they're not very nicely maintained. They're bombs. Everybody bashes them around, right? It's just a temple car. But if it is my car, then I take very nicely care of it because it's mine, Actually, you would think it should be the other way around. Krishna's car, we take very nicely care. And the other one, it's just my old bomb, But no, so it's when it's mine, then we give all the care and service and And also Grihastha life, for example, is definitely motivated by the false ego. The I, me, and mine is part of the motivating force of the Grihastha. Definitely. I have observed that projects where, rural communities, when no Grihastha owns anything, they're usually not so successful because they attract people who can't, develop anything materially. And those people who have the capability to develop something, they rather do their own thing. They want to have their own project, so this I, me, and mine, very important part of Grihastha life. That keeps him responsible and motivated. And then the purifying duty is to give in charity. That loosens the knot to I, me, and mine, Even Nanda Maharaj in Krishna book, he had thousands of cows. They were his cows. They were not Vishnu's cows or something. They were his cows. And he was giving them in charity at every opportunity, so Grihastha is motivated by a sense of ownership. It is an important part of Grihastha life. So Grihasthas do need some sense of ownership, that they establish something, pass something down to the children, give in charity. Grihasthas are meant to provide for all the other three ashrams, So, sometimes we find that people You know, if they're not motivated by the false ego, they rather don't get anything happening. But no, you know, that false ego motivating force has some good part in it too. Any quick question on that point before we finish? Yeah, not only for its proprietorship, but simply thinking ourselves to be something which we are not. This can be proprietor, this can be controller, this can be enjoyer, you know? And basically identification with the body, with the nationality, with the hats, and. Yes, everything together. Yes. Anything else? Any comment about the ambitiousness versus all I want to do is serve motivation? Yes.
So saying that if that motivating force from false ego is not there, if one is thinking of serving, sometimes he may not be sufficiently motivated to take ownership of the project or, you know, make the project move forward. Like you're giving the example of Grihasthas or false ego is, you're giving the example of how Grihasthas false ego is important. Otherwise, you know, communities may not develop very well, because if it is a temple property, then we may not take care of it because it's not, you know, I don't have that sense of ownership there. Is that because there's a lack of service mood, or is it because of service mood that there is this lack of ownership? So I was not clear about that.
No, it simply means that we are still running more on the false ego motivating force. It motivates us more, the Aimian mind, whereas the motivating force of serving Krishna is not yet as prominent. You know, we can say when we start off, the false ego motivating force is prominent. That's the conditioning, the materialistic conditioning. You know, we do things motivated through the false ego. So, and then we are meant to transform that into the motivating force of I'm a servant. And that takes some time. That takes some purification. We have to first, you know, build a connection with Krishna. And we have to get that sambandha gyan, that knowledge. Who am I? Who is Krishna? What is this whole material world all about? So as long as these things are not deeply established in the heart, then our motivating force of simply wanting to serve Guru, Prabhupada, Krishna is just not as strong. It's not as developed. Right? So it's a gradual transformation that we transform this material false ego motivating force gradually into the motivating force. All I want to do is serve. And there's all kinds of mixtures and shades and grades there along the journey, you know. Yes. Yeah. Okay, so let us finish on this note. So tomorrow I do want to discuss at least one rule of Vaishnava etiquette, which is really important in regards to dissolving the false ego. Vaishnava etiquette and culture is always our saving grace. So there is a few rules which are not so well understood or even known at all, or even though we may have heard it, but we don't apply it, we don't practice it. So yeah, that's what I would like to present tomorrow. So please come back tomorrow. Tomorrow will be the last program I'll be giving here in in Rupanuga Vedic College. So Wednesday, I'm flying out. Okay, thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki, Gaura Premanandi. Also, just in case there's somebody who still didn't get any books, today is another chance. And also, I have decided to show this book, which I don't have here now, but since I have to send a box anyway, and it is just now printed in India, I thought I can show it to you just in case some of you are interested in it. Title is Family Life as an Ashram, Secrets of Success. So it is very relevant for those who are in a relationship. There's a lot of things in there which are, pretty interesting. What it means that our family life or our marriage is actually an ashram. Yeah. So if any of you are interested, let me know. I can put you on the list. It's also $20 and you can pay by cash or Zelle as we have done before. Yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you.